Okay, so this is a how to fix when your Hot Wheels 1/10 scale Cybertruck's rear wheel stops spinning. The reason why they stop spinning is because there's a screw on the inside of the differential. Right, I've repaired this one already, but yeah, so the differential makes it so that when you're taking corners, the inside wheel can spin at a lower rate than the outside wheel. So it spins a little bit. The motor can actually put more power to the outside wheel than the inside wheel. So for this repair, we need to get inside the chassis, and basically it's just where Hot Wheels should have used a left-handed screw instead of right-handed screw. This might very well come loose again sometime. So we'll find out in the future. I'll drive this thing around more if it keeps happening. Maybe I'll find a left-hand screw and see if that fixes it. Anyways, tool-wise, I'm pretty sure we don't actually need the remote at all for this. We're just going to need a number 1 Phillips screwdriver. Doesn't have to be this small. You can get bigger ones, like this one. This one works fine too. But the key thing being that it's a size number 1. Get that close to the camera. It's probably not focusing. So yeah, Phillips number 1. Length, 1.5 inches at least, because there's a couple of spots where the screws are really deep, specifically right up front here. Yeah, not quite 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches. If you had 1.25 inches in length, you'd be able to reach these screws, which are the deepest ones. Okay, so we have 8 screws that need to come out. Their locations are 2 in the front bumper, 2 just behind the front wheels, 2 just before the rear wheels, and then 2 at the rear bumper. To initially get it, that's just to get the top off of this thing. Now, as you're getting the top off, there is 4 leads, 4 wires that are attached to the top that are for the LEDs, and they are, from what I remember, hardwired into the control board. So we got to be careful. There's plenty of room in there, so it's just you got to make sure you don't tug on the wires. So unscrew them and come on out. There it is. So each of these screws are specific plastic screws. They got a very coarse thread to them. Each one of these screws is about 3/8 in length. Probably get the calipers out for that. Zero them out. Okay, so their diameter 0.113. I'll figure out what size that actually is. And then our length, measured from under the head, 0.38. So 3/8 of an inch. 5 thou heavy. Actually, might be. No, not quite 10 millimeters. So it's probably an imperial size. And then, yeah, it's just got a Phillips number 1 head. And just so you guys, have good practice of taking things apart, you don't need to have what I have here. I've got a specific tray over here that has individually, like an A1, A2. It's got basically each screw that I'm going to be taking out in order, and I'm just setting them there. so that it is nice and organized and I know exactly the reverse order that it should be going back together in. And back in. Get that out of there. Okay, screw number 2. If you have a magnetic screwdriver, these screws come out a lot easier. This particular screwdriver that I have is not magnetic in the least. There it goes. 3. Start turning it upside down. I can't really see what's going on to let the screw drop out. 4. 5. 6. That one is close enough to the surface, you can just pull it out. 7. And you know what? I'm going to move the mat over to this side so you guys can see all the parts that I'm laying out. Alright. So there's the mat. Here are all the fasteners so far, 1 through 8. Okay. So now we can just take the top straight off. And like I said, we have 4 wires. 1, 2, 3, 4 for the LEDs up top. Well, I guess actually it's technically 8 wires because they're paired. Anyways, there's this sort of flimsy vacuum formed piece that covers the electronics, which we don't really need to open up to get at what we need to fix here. Let's take another quick look. I'm going to take it off anyway. Just I don't think there's a way of disconnecting the LEDs up top. I'm double checking. Take that screw out. This piece aside. That screw down. Yeah, no, all the LEDs are soldered right to the board, so we got no way of taking those off without a bunch of dismantling or unsoldering, or and all the LEDs are just sort of like hot glued into place. Personally, I'm not a big fan of, but whatever, they're LEDs. Anywho, so the next thing we need to get into is where the motor is. So I'll actually flip everything over. Anyway, so we have our motors in here. We have our gear for the motor that goes to secondary gear, which goes to the differential. And to get into here, we've got to undo 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it just 5? Yeah, 5 screws to get this whole unit off. And then we got to undo these 2 screws to alleviate the tension of the shock tower. And well, they're not shocks, I guess they're just springs. There's no dampers built into these. They have no they just go full force when they compress and decompress, so it's pretty bouncy in the suspension. Anywho, so yeah, once we get these 5 screws out and these 2 screws out, we can take both springs off, and then Well, when we get to that stage, I'll show what's going on. So. And I probably should note, you should always disconnect the power when you're working on stuff like this. So yeah, that's the power to the battery right there. And then this, I can't see it that well. So this was the battery connector, the red and black. And then the white connector that goes to a 3-ribbon thing. 3-ribbon cable goes underneath of the vehicle, and that's the USB charging port. So now that we don't have power connected, it doesn't matter if you touch stuff in here, it won't really do anything to you. Since it's powered down anyways, it wouldn't really be that big of an issue, and even if it did get a shock, it wouldn't be that great, because I want to say, I don't actually know what voltage this runs off of. It's probably later on, maybe, if you guys want, I'll do a full teardown and we'll find out if these are hooked up in parallel or in series. Probably hooked up in series. Probably wouldn't be that hard to go and upgrade the battery in this thing so that it runs for a bit longer, although that being said, it doesn't run for that terrible amount of the time. But if you ever changed out like the electric motor for a higher power motor, even then that might not be the best idea, because all the gears in here are plastic, except for actually the one that's, you'll see, attached to the motor itself. That one looks like it's made of brass. But there's a good, like, even all the wishbones and all that are all made of plastic. So there's a good chance if you got a higher powered motor in here that it would just tear things apart. Who knows? Maybe I'll do that anyways, just for the fun of it. Okay, so yeah, those 5 screws out. Now this whole component will come out. Again, it's all attached to the board here, so you gotta kind of be careful. And then on this assembly, maybe this time I'll do it a little bit different. These shocks come off pretty easy. They just sort of roughly clip on. Let me get that closer. You just pull back right here and it comes loose. Pull back, comes loose, and now the arms can kind of just move however they want. And we'll take this screw out of the top. I know I said we're going to take these 2 out, but let's just do it this way. See how it goes. Originally I took out these 2 screws, and this whole assembly was just sort of floating in the way. So I'm going to try to just remove these shocks, because yeah, even after I removed these 2 screws, these 2 top links were still in place. So it was kind of annoying to deal with. Let's try it without it. One. Take the shock out. Not shock, it's a spring. It's just a spring, Brandon. 1 and 2. Alrighty, so now these kind of just move willy-nilly, which is kind of nice. These do have screws in the event that we want to take them out, but I kind of don't really want to. We'll see if we can work around it. So now we got 1, 2, 3 screws to get this top case off, and then we should have access to the differential, which is where sorry about the lighting. Come on, there it goes. 1, 2, 3. Come on. That might be staying in there because of the, might be too close to the motor and it's being magnetized. Oh, it was just barely hanging in there. 3. All right, now that those 3 screws are out, this whole thing just splits open. Be a little bit careful. If you pull too hard, all the internals will just go everywhere. So just nice and gently lift it up. And now I remember why I took those 2 top screws out. Okay. We'll take the 2 screws out. I can't get this casing off without taking these screws out of the way. We could work around it, but it would be kind of annoying, as you can see. Not a lot of room to work on there, so we're just going to get this cover out of the way by removing these screws. One. As you can see, these screws are, oh, you can't see because it's not in frame. And these screws are quite a bit longer. They are 5/8 in length. Yeah, about 5/8. 1. And I dropped that 1. 2. All right, now should just be able to pull this underneath. You can see all the nice grease they put in there. It's actually not too bad of a build for a more inexpensive, or it's not super inexpensive, you know. It's $100 bucks in the US, 130-ish in Canada. But yeah, they actually have some somewhat decent componentry in here. We got that little brass gear set that I was talking about. We're going to leave the motor in. We're going to leave this reduction gear in. And we're mainly just after the differential, which is right here. So to get the differential out, you just kind of wiggle the wishbone and it'll pop out. Pull it to one side. There it comes. Okay, so that's the whole differential. So normally this would be rotating everything and spinning both at the same time. And if there's more friction on one side than the other side will spin more to give a more equal power to each wheel. It also prevents the inside wheel or the outside wheel from skidding while turning. In a straight line, it doesn't really make a difference. In fact, sometimes it can be a little bit annoying, especially if you get one wheel literally off the ground. It'll just free spin while the other one is just staying there. That's where you need like a limited slip differential, or which isn't really a thing for RC cars. It might be. I don't know. I haven't really done this hobby in a long time. So anyways, so typically it'll just be the left-hand side that has actually come loose. And what it is there's a gear that interacts with these gears here that is screwed into this shaft, and as this shaft spins, there's a little bit of play in it, and it slowly untightens the screw to the point where it can just free spin. So to get at it, we need to take these two. By the way, you probably should wear gloves or something if you don't really care for grease getting on your hands. It's all like, it's not, don't eat it or anything, but it's not dangerous for your hands or anything. So screw one, oops, and Alright, when you gotta take this apart, there's a bunch of little axles that I don't think they're seated in well, but basically you see this screw on the inside, that's what will come loose and will spin independently, like this, which rotates the wishbones. Wishbones? No, dog bones. That's what it is. This rotates the drive shaft, which is a dog bone style drive shaft, to the wheels. Will spin independently of this gear. So basically, it'll act like one wheel is off the ground all the time, instead of the power going directly to the other wheel, or both wheels simultaneously. Let me just see if do these pins come out. They do. Okay. Well, let's put that back in there. Get our gear back on. Actually, all these gears are the same, so we can take them off. You can get a better idea of what's in there. So now that all the gears are out of the way, you can see how this directly rotates this gear, and when it gets loose, just loosen it off a little bit, throw a couple gears back on to add some resistance, and I don't know, it's still on there pretty good. Loosen it a bit more. Right there, it starts spinning on its own. Oh yeah. So yeah, to fix this all, we just need to tighten that down. But I'll show you how everything sort of fits together inside. If you take this screw all the way out, take this guy all the way out, a little snug. You can see there's two flat spots on the shaft, and they correspond. Let me get this screw out of here. So there's two flat spots on the inside of this gear as well, which you probably can't see very well, but you know, flat spot here, flat spot there, out there, keys into flat spots on the inside of the gear, and then when they seat nicely, they get locked together. But if it gets too far out, then it can just cam itself out and start spinning. And you can see that's kind of what happened. We got some not marring, but it's deformed the plastic because it loosened up too much and then just started spinning. So over time, there's a good chance that if this keeps happening, this flat spot will just be almost it'll just round off the entire shaft, and then you might need a new, either this piece or this piece, depending on which one gives up first. I want to say this piece because I'm pretty sure this is made of nylon, so it should be pretty robust. Anyways, the other side is actually built identically. The shafts are the same, so even these gears, I'm pretty sure, are identical. Yep, same tooth count. So it might make sense to swap one side for the other side, just because the chances of this guy coming loose is very slim, since the direction that it's being turned is always to tighten itself. I believe. that make sense? No, it doesn't make sense in this situation because the force would be exerted in this direction to try to turn the wheel. We should try to loosen it off every time. So maybe it was just one side was looser than the other. Yeah, in my head, this one should be the one that's left hand threaded. And it's not, it's a right threaded. Just double checking that this is in fact symmetrical. Yeah, there's the clean shaft. There's an unmarred version of the shaft that meets the dog bone. Alrighty, so I'll put this all back together. This goes right back on there. Get our screw in there. Tighten it up. Good and firm. Might even want to shove something in here to go and tighten it up. Let's take one of these shock tower screws, put it through just to get a little bit more leverage. Actually wondering if it would make more sense to, no, this won't fit. Okay, well that's on there pretty schniz and tight. Put that one aside. We'll put this one back in. Put our gear back on. Make sure it's lined up. There we go. Put our screw back in. Tighten our screw down. Honestly, this side feels a lot tighter than the other side. I might just shave this down just a little bit so that it's a bit more free. Maybe it won't try to let itself go as easily. So, screw away, drop out our gear, pull out the shaft. Try to take off this little bearing. It's on there pretty good. And I'm actually surprised to see like proper ball bearings on something like this. No, let's not try to take that off. Okay. So I got one of two options. I can either take a little bit off of the back side of this gear, or take a little bit off there. So I'm going to take a little bit off the back side of the gear. So I'll put this back in. So that's spinning nice and free. This here. Get out the old trusty Leatherman. Take out our file. Oops. Okay, definitely didn't take off much. Let's see how this goes now. There, have it seat. Drop the screw in. Tighten her down. It's still pretty tight. You could say that that's a limited slip differential right there, but only for the one wheel. If I back it off just a little bit, it spins fairly more easily. Yeah, well, we'll give that a go. If it gives us any problems in the future, we know how to take it apart. So we'll drop our lower gears on first. We have our 2 levels of where the gears go. Higher level gears. Take the opposite side. Get it located on the pins. There we go. It's back together. Put our screws back in. Tighten that all back together. All right. Now, get the dog bones, which I think these are called dog bones. I'll have to double check that. Angle them in. 1 and 2. Now that they're in, drop this back into place. Right there. Lift everything up. Get our little case back in there. Double check that everything's good. Yep. Feels all right. Put our suspension tower screws back in. Our 3 screws that held the case together. 1, 2, 3. All right, and now we add our screws that have a little bit bigger head to them for holding the springs in place. All right, there we go. Everything's functioning. Differential has a little bit of tension on it so that it's actually rotating the motor. You can feel those little clicks of the DC motor going in between its different poles. There we go. Huh. Interesting. Okay, we'll get our wheels back in place, which, yeah, just drops right in like so. Lift this up, see if I get a better view. All right, then we have our 5 screws. One, 2. You don't want to over tighten these screws because they are going into plastic. So, oh, I'm silly. I got my wiring in the way. Oops. Oops. Number 3. 4. 5. Let's double check that it's all seated. Yep. Looking good. Alrighty, so now we can flip everything back over. We'll reconnect our power. Put our shroud back on. Which is a little tough to find that hole. There we go. Now we just gotta lift this all back on. Flip her over. Put our screws back in. 1 and 2. And the 2 just before the rear wheels. So you guys can see where it is. There we go. Down to the last 4. Oh. Just before the front wheels. And then the 2 deepest ones. Bumper. Front bumper. And there we have it. Just to make sure that we didn't bugger anything up. Lights turn on. Oh, come on. Remote turns on. There we go. Forward. Back. Left. Right. There we go. She's fixed.